I want to talk about a manga that I'm surprised I haven't actually talked about in my career. And this is not like a comprehensive review that's scripted or anything. I'm literally just going off the cuff because I kind of want to talk about it. And I've definitely noticed that, especially in recent times in the manga and anime community, with all these new faces coming out into the scene now and wanting to go back and read some of the stuff in the past that maybe they didn't grow up with. I've seen one manga in particular, and one anime as well, because the anime adaptation is also fantastic, that gets brought up time and time again, that older heads of the community are trying to recommend to the new people coming into the manga and anime community as being the peak of the medium. I'm saying that in a facetious tone, but I genuinely do agree that the manga that I'm going to be talking about, or I guess just yapping about in this video, is pretty up there in terms of notoriety, in terms of cohesion, in terms of just being a really fucking good story. And you all watch my videos, you're a bunch of smart people, so you already know what manga that I'm going to be talking about, but it's this one right here, Monster by Urasawa Naoki. I fucking love this manga. And I think any person with any sense of media literacy or just a fan of the medium of manga and anime will agree that Monster is definitely up there when it comes to some of the greatest manga that has ever been created. I mean, just talking about the author alone, Urasawa Naoki is easily in the top 5 GOATs when it comes to mangakas. He wrote this amazing manga that I'll be talking about today, as well as 20th Century Boys, Billy Bat, all of these amazing pieces of literature is the only way I can describe it, put into manga form. But as someone who has read pretty much everything that Urasawa Naoki has produced into this world, I do believe Monster is his magnum opus. And admittedly, the first time I read Monster, I feel like I was a little bit too young into my manga reading career, if you can call it that, to fully put all of the pieces together and to truly appreciate it. And it has been such a long time too. I was in like early high school when I read Monster, and admittedly, I feel like I was a little bit too young to be reading something like this to fully appreciate it. So as a 31-year-old unk, I went back and read it, and it's peak. And I obviously don't want to give too much of it away, because I genuinely do think that going into this as blind as possible is the best way to experience it. But I'll give you guys like a very quick Wikipedia-esque breakdown of the general story of what you'll be getting into. Our main character is a Japanese brain surgeon by the name of Tenma, who starts off, working in a very prestigious hospital in Germany. The majority of the manga is set in Germany and other places in Europe. So Dr. Tenma is one of the GOATs when it comes to brain surgery. And one day he encounters a situation where a family has been murdered. The parents are both been shot and they've been killed on the spot. And the two sole survivors is this twin sibling, one sister and one brother. The sister, who is unharmed, has suffered from an intense amount of trauma due to, naturally watching her parents get killed in front of her eyes. And the twin brother has been shot in the head, but he's still alive. And it's up to Dr. Tenma to save this poor child who has unfortunately been caught in the crossfire of this terrible family murder. And so he successfully saves this child, who, by the way, is Johann, who is the antagonist, I guess if you can call it that, the villain in the story of Monster. Probably one of the more famous characters. When you hear of the manga Monster, most of the time you don't think of Dr. Tenma, you think of Johann Liebert, the villain, the monster, if you will, in the manga Monster. So Johann gets saved by Dr. Tenma, but one day he just disappears from the hospital. No one knows where he is, and everyone goes, oh, that's a little bit weird. And then as things go on, all around Dr. Tenma, some unfortunate events start to happen. A bunch of his co-workers and his higher-ups at the hospital all get mysteriously murdered, and Tenma feels that he is responsible for rebirthing, or I guess saving, Johann, because it's put into question that Johann was actually the one behind all of these murders. So Tenma himself is responsible for, I believe he actually says in the manga, for saving the monster, saving this kid who has turned out to be this very evil person. And so now it is Dr. Tenma's quest to basically vanquish or repent for his sins for saving this child, which is very conflicting, right? Because, you know, Dr. Tenma is a self-respected doctor who treats all lives as equal, and, you know, he at the same time is obviously proud of the work that he managed to save this child, but when it comes at the cost of other people's lives, he almost feels responsible for letting loose this monster out into the world to cause hurt and tyranny. And really, when it comes to the plot of this manga, I kind of have to stop here, because any more explanation will, I feel, take away from the true cohesion and the sense of ambiguity that Urasawa Naoki likes to put into his manga. Because not only is this an incredibly cohesive manga where so many characters come out over the 18 volumes of this manga that all have different lives, different moral compasses, different reasons that they are doing certain activities, whether they be morally just or not. But at the end of it all of these seemingly loose ends perfectly get tied together and create a situation where every single character you see in this manga plays their role to further advance the story and to also keep you in this seemingly confusing at first story. Because there are so many questions that get thrown out throughout the runtime of Monster, like, why is Johann, our antagonist, our villain, doing the things that he is doing? Why does Tenma feel this sense of sin, or I guess almost disgust at himself for doing basically what his job entails, which is saving lives? What I find absolutely brilliant about Monster, and again, I'm going to try and say this with little spoilers as possible, comes from the very simple title. Most people, when they read about Monster before actually diving into the intricacies of the story, will most likely tie the word in the title to our villain, which is Johann Liebert. And yes, while that makes perfect sense, I mean, it's often quoted throughout the manga as Johann being this monster. He even calls himself the monster at times as well. It's also this beautifully intricate yet interesting question of who is the real monster. I mean, the final chapter of the manga is literally called The Real Monster. Because the word monster is such an interesting choice that Urasawa used, because it is very perspective-based. One person can call someone a monster due to the actions that they do or the moral compasses that they have without knowing the reasoning behind the moral compasses and deem them perhaps as evil or monster-ish. But then another person who knows the full story, who has a different level of empathy, who understands the full picture, may not call that person a monster, but more of a victim, and you yourself, who is judging that person for being a monster, as the real monster. This whole idea of where does trauma start? How is evil planted into a person? Why do people run to certain heinous or monster-like actions and consequences is a constant storytelling method throughout the manga that constantly leaves you on edge. And the final chapter in the manga and the way that this manga ends is sprinkled with a very tasteful amount of Urasawa Naoki ambiguity, something that he loves doing with all of his manga. If you've read manga like Billy Bat, for instance, all of his endings are very open-ended, and he almost throws the question that has been posed throughout and told through the characters in his story back at the reader. In the case with Monster, that question being, who is the real monster, and what should happen to those people who are deemed as the monster? Can a person who has been traumatized and has lived through a very difficult life, sometimes within their control, a lot of times out of their control, and has been birthed into something that is universally, or I guess, majoritively seen as heinous or evil, come back from those actions when they have learnt their lesson. Obviously, because it is such an open-ended manga, my analysis on it is probably not the full story, and that's what makes the conversation around Monster so interesting and engaging, and I think that's why, especially as of recently, Monster has been recommended to so many new manga fans and new anime fans. Because unlike a lot of meat and potato shonen that have the epic fights at the end where the bad guy loses and the good guy prevails and it's all happy and rainbows, Monster decides to turn the other leaf and instead give you an ending that some people have called unsatisfactory, and to be honest, the first time I read Monster as well, I kind of felt that way too. Maybe because, again, I read this as an early teenager and I was so used to reading the meat and potatoes shonen that had a very clear distinction between good and evil. And I feel Monster was perhaps one of the first manga that made me kind of question what even good and evil really is. How does a person constitute what is good and what is evil, and is that a universal metric for the most part? Well, to Monster and all the characters in Monster and the message behind Monster to that question, the answer would be no. There is really no way to determine universally if something is good or evil, because it's all a matter of perspective and it's all a matter of understanding the full picture. Because throughout the entire story of Monster, you are led to believe that Johann Liebert is this evil person who is doing things because of his evil plans and evil actions. And the supporting characters that you see throughout the story who talk about Johann in this way would further emphasize you to believe that, yeah, Johann is the most villainous, just wants to watch the world burn Joker type of character. But as you continue on through the story and you learn some of the small mysteries surrounding Johann's past and the more intricate details of his upbringing and the thought process that led to that upbringing and led to what he has become today, you start to realize that, again, he might not be this evil person doing things for the love of the game. If anything, it might be society being the monsters instead, that is pushed this poor, innocent child to think and feel in these certain ways that are deemed as evil or monster-esque. It's an incredibly fascinating manga, and I'm genuinely, as a longtime manga and anime fan, am so fucking proud, and I don't say this often, I'm so fucking proud of the manga and anime community for kind of trying to bring a new light back into a story like Monster, because this is not a matter of like, oh, it's overhyped or it's overloved or anything. Like, if you love genuinely good, cohesive storytelling and easily one of the most interesting villains, quote unquote, in anime and manga, then this is it. This is the manga that every manga fan and anime fan needs to read or watch. And I'm hyping up the manga right now, but the anime adaptation as well is genuinely incredible. The soundtrack is amazing. All the voice acting is good. It manages to hold on to that looming, brooding atmosphere that the manga does so well to maintain throughout its 18-volume run. And granted, this is not necessarily the most, I guess, easy to read manga or easy to consume anime, because, a lot of the TikTok-brained anime and manga fans of today might look at Monster and being like, it's too slow. Nothing's happening. It's a slow burner. But I promise you, if you stick through with it, it is the most rewarding manga and anime you could consume in the year of 2026. There is a reason why Johann Liebert is constantly in conversation deemed as one of the best written villains in manga and anime. Hell, I would argue one of the best written villains in all of literature. So yeah, that was just me yapping about Monster. Go and read it. And if you have read it, let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Obviously, try not to, say any spoilers if you can. What are some of the points that you would use to try to recommend Monster to new manga and anime fans? I'm curious to know your comments. That's all I wanted to talk about. So thanks for watching. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to smack my face right here, subscribe to the channel. Let's keep making big channel number go bigger. Over here next to my head, a couple more videos you can check out if you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.